And now on the fix, let's look at the big stories that will shape the week ahead. It's time for the look ahead. Let's get straight to our reporter roundtable and what we'll be talking about this week. Joining me is Mia Malan. She's the editor at Becky Sisa at the Mail and Guardian, and of course also Sowetan editor Sitimbisa Msomi, and back with me, Peter Bruce from Sunday Times. Mia, you've just heard the Health Minister, Motsoaledi. I mean, you know health policy inside out. Do you know if they know what they are doing?
Well, they've certainly published a bill that has specified some of the things that you've asked the minister. So they're very clear. They've published two bills. The one is amendments to the Medical Schemes Act, where the minister is going to try to align medical aids, the way that they look currently, to what the NHI would look like. That's why he's introduced things like no co-payments, or not waiting periods, or no brokers, and also to change the kind of services that they offer. So as opposed to the current services of prescribed minimum benefits, rather change that to a comprehensive package like what the NHI would offer. And the NHI bill certainly specifies the timeline that you've asked. It's very clear that there are 3 phases. We're in the second phase at the moment, of which the main aim would be to introduce legislation.
Okay, let me just bring in Stimbiso here. Stimbiso, I mean, do you think that the bills as they stand is going to get us to the kind of equality in terms of health access that the minister is talking about?
That is what a lot of people are crying for, because I mean, for many years we've been talking about universal access to health care. But what seems to be a problem is people not being sure that government can actually deliver this, looking at how other facets of government are functioning and how institutions of the state are not functioning properly. That would they be able to do this in the healthcare sector? It seems too big a project, yet it has to happen.
Yeah. Peter, the big question, of course, is do you believe the minister can pull it off?
Well, no, I think he slightly misunderstood or deliberately misunderstood the question I asked him about the private sector, because what I wasn't suggesting was that you privatize healthcare, but that you give it to private sector managers to run because they know what they're doing. And all you have to do is you have to say to them, this is what you have, this is your performance, criteria. We're going to pay 20 Rand for an appendectomy and whatever it might be. These are your charges. Now go run it. Yeah,
but I mean, this brings me to the story that you exposed, Mia, the corruption, the deep, deep corruption that, of course, is happening in our health system. The latest example is, of course, the SIU findings in what happened 10 years ago under the former MEC of Health here in Gauteng, Mr. Brian Hlongwa. Take us through what happened there and how that kind of capture, because that's essentially what it was. It predates the Guptas, but it certainly looks and smells like capture, doesn't it?
I certainly think it was capture because of the involvement and the authorization for the involvement of a private company called 3P to basically run the Gauteng Health Department. So while Brian Hlongwa was the health MEC between 2006 and 2009, he allowed this company, 3P Consulting, to second 20 of its employees to the department and take over major positions, of which one was the head of finance, who authorized all the payments that 3P had to do.
Can you see what happens if you bring in the private
No, but if you do it secretly and sort of underhand, then all of the, if you start off deciding to steal, then you're going to steal. But if it's a transparent process and there's, everybody knows what's going on right from the start, then you can hold people to account. You can't hold people to account if you don't know what they're doing.
Now, may I just explain, how did this collusion happen between these private companies and the MEC? How did you find out that there's actually a link between the one and the other, and how did they design the system to make it work for them?
So they essentially were... They contract this company and essentially asked them, in addition to many other things, but here's where the biggest collusion happened, to create a turnaround strategy for the Gauteng Health Department. And in the process of this turnaround strategy, they created a project management unit for which they contracted friends and directors and family members at hugely inflated prices for services that were often not delivered. And one of the companies that it subcontracted was a Gupta-linked company Yes.
And when was this?
This was in between 2006 and 2010. I can't remember exact year for that. I think it was 2009. And you could imagine what came out of that. But I think the important thing for today is how that set the scene for other health tragedies to happen. So the one thing it did is almost in every single year that Brian Hlonga was the health MEC, they overspent the budget. So because of all the corruption, they left the department in huge amounts of debt. And then happened Life Esidimeni in 2015. And one of the arguments the department used why they wanted to transfer patients from private facilities to very ill-equipped, cheaper community organizations was a money crisis.
Absolutely. Now, let me bring you in here, Stembi. So, Brian Hlonga is a repeat offender. This chap is not new to corruption. He's now the current, a chief whip for the ANC in the Gauteng legislature. When I contacted the ANC during the week, Hope Papo, he said they are still studying the report. I mean, surely Makura cannot be the face of the anti-corruption pushback if Brian Hlonga is in fact still the chief whip.
In fact, this is where the real problem with how the ANC fights corruption is. Because in 2014 already, there were these rumors. That's partly why he was removed as MEC. He was not reappointed because there were all these rumors around him and corruption. There was an investigation. There were reports before saying that this SIU report is saying this. Yes, the report was not out there. The ANC could have done its own investigation. It could have acted against him. Instead, they just believe that just shifting him aside, making him chief whip or giving him another position other than making him an MEC will make us forget 5-10 years down the line, probably he'll come back. I think that has been the problem. The party has been too soft in dealing with corruption.
Now, you say this in your column today, Peter. You say that Cyril Ramaphosa must stop with the inspirational speeches. He must get down and start doing things. Does he start by instructing people like Makura to get rid of people like Brian Hlonga?
I think he's got to find the cojones to try. Yeah, he's got to give it a go. You know, it's a little bit like the land thing. He's got to, if he wants to test the constitution on expropriating land without compensation, then do it.
Yeah.
Find a piece of land and expropriate it. Let's see what happens. And the same goes to people like Brian Hlonga. If he's done something wrong, then sack him.
Okay. Now, Mia, policy is, of course, an important issue, right? And policy certainty in the ANC is a very contested matter. How united is the ANC on the question of health policy and this NHI? I mean, just at the National Union of Mine conference, the president was very clear. He defined the situation as a crisis and said the NHI is real. It's going to happen, pretty much as emphatic as the land question.
I think both the ANC and Labour is very much in support of the idea of the NHI, like many of us are. But there are doubts from some sectors about the ability to implement it. And there are other aspects that may come to influence the success of the NHI. One of the key things would be that the NHI bill essentially gives the minister the power, the NHI, the power to set rates for doctors and what they're allowed to ask. There's going to be major court cases for that. It also, for instance, suggests that medical aids reform their role. So you cannot imagine that there wouldn't be court cases from the medical aid industry as to protect their survival. So there are quite a few things that will influence whether this can be implemented or not.
Now, of course, the crisis in the African National Congress is real precisely because people experience a crisis in health services as the governing party. Stevie, so we saw here Mr. Mokgoro, Job Mokgoro, being sworn in as the Northwest Premier. He's 70 years old. Let's have a listen.
Let me use this opportunity to thank the African National Congress for the confidence they have demonstrated in me. I stand here in your honorable house to pledge my commitment to relentlessly deliver on the expectations of this glorious movement, the African National Congress, ensuring that we listen to the concerns, especially of the marginalized of our communities, and using society's scarce resources to address critical needs of our people.
That, of course, the new, very new, brand new minted Premier of the Northwest. Peter, he's 70 years old. I don't think there's an essential relationship between age and good governance.
Not necessarily.
Or youth and, you know, and new ideas. But does it say something about the fact that the ANC doesn't have leaders?
No, I mean, if you look at the ANC and you're trying to sort of think 10 years, and Stambisa will know better than any of us, you know, where's the new leadership coming from? Where at least one young minister or whatever it might be, they just don't seem to be there.
Yep. True.
Yeah.
And especially in that province. I mean, if you look at Northwest, they struggled even, I mean, post-1994, they always struggled to find leaders. They had to send Popo Mulife from Gauteng to
But they had Stambisa, a
now,
49-year-old premier, and he ran the bloody province into the ground.
yes, that is true. But there are other leaders who are out there. I mean, there are brilliant guys who are campaigning against him ahead of the conference in December. Very brilliant young people. But the ANC could not appoint them because of the stalemate that exists in the leadership. Yeah. So they couldn't choose any of them. So they had to find someone he will live with and the other side could accept.
You know, now a lot is happening over the weekend. The Limpopo province is the latest to, of course, also involve themselves in legal challenges around the ANC's conferences. Let's take a listen to the ANC's General Secretary, or rather Secretary General, Ace Magashule, condemned party members who took the party to the court. He also questioned their loyalty to the party and how they're funding these court challenges.
The ANC cannot be distracted by one or two or three individuals who think that they are bigger than this organization. And that's why we must condemn throughout the country and in this province those who use the judiciary for their factional tendencies. Because it is now becoming fashionable for people to take the ANC to court. When you are 1,500 or 600 delegates and 3, 4, 5 people take the ANC to court, what do they think? Do they think they can be this movement? Who are they? Are they still part of us? Which agenda are they serving? Do they want to reverse the gains of our revolution because of their self-interest? Who is funding them? Who is this?
That is, of course, Ace Magashule there, you know, asking very provocative questions and suggesting again, when they don't have answers for their own internal divisions, that there's a third force. I mean, do you even take him seriously?
It has always been a great ANC.
I suspect he knows the answers to the questions.
You always have to blame the third force, and you get the support. But the reality is that I think the ANC is not going to escape this. There are going to be court challenges until the party finds a better way of holding elections, find a more credible way of assessing whether the branches are ready or not. Because, I mean, if the PEC conducts elections for regions, there's always going to be claims that they are being rigged, one faction is favoring its own supporters over others. So I don't think that intimidating members, threatening to expel them from the organization is going to work. They made that threat in 2012, they made it again last year, but still people are taking them to court.
Now, you know, of course, we look here at the City Press and the Sunday Times. They're leading with the same stories, how VBS was plundered. And, of course, what we see here is that the king and his associates and, you know, all the cronies associated with this institution was living the high life when poor people who use this bank to put in meager savings are, in fact, left stranded. And, of course, the other group that was left stranded are municipalities. They've got huge debt here. Mia, when you have a situation like this, when we look at the failure of governance, you look at the issue of health, what are the implications for people? I mean, it's literally a question of life and death, isn't it?
Absolutely. The health sector is not ESCOM or SAA. People die. And we see that every day. Life Esidimeni is an absolute case in point. And part of what happened under the former MEC's reign set the scene for corruption.
Yeah.
One of the things in Life Esidimeni was that organizations got contracted without having been registered or being falsely registered. That's very similar to what happened with 3P. It sets the scene that it's okay to do it.
Now, Peter, if one looks at the mess that the ANC is in, your column speaks about the president having to be decisive. Every province has been plagued by court challenges, bar, let's say, Gauteng, and I think Stembiso, what is it, Western Cape, right? Yeah. Is this an organization that can fight the toughest election that it is facing since the breakthrough in 1994?
No, look, I think it'll win the election, but the big problem, the tragedy of democratic South Africa, is that power and therefore money gets transferred to the provinces without anybody in the provinces knowing how to look after it. There should be a means test. If you want to run your own education in a certain province, pass the means test. If you want to build your own roads, pass the means test and you'll get the budget. It's crazy that Northwest should have the same competencies as Gauteng and, let's say, Western Province, because they don't have the people to run those things.
Which, of course, brings me to this question of this whole government review, the size of the government, the size of the cabinet. The president has undertaken this process. We know that it's going to take a long time, but he's going to get a lot of resistance, isn't he, Stempie? So particularly from the provincial barons of the ANC, because that's where the patronage lies.
True. That's why my theory is that we haven't seen enough in terms of the problems that the ANC is going to encounter in the coming months. After the elections, when that report is out and when you start reducing the size of government and other people are outside of government, that's where then President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to have real problems.
Mia, if you look at political parties going into these elections, you cover basic issues such as health and so on. To what extent will issues like that inform the political choices that people make in terms of who to vote for?
Well, I think the key health issue is going to be the NHI. And I think if you think about whether the NHI would be good or bad, it depends where you come from. If you come from the public health sector, it might be better than what you're used to. If you come from the private health sector, then you wouldn't be very positive because it will almost certainly not offer you what the current level of private service offers you.
So, Peter, given that contradiction and that dichotomy, do you think the black middle class will stay loyal to the ANC still?
Yeah. It's always been a middle-class party, and I think that's its core constituency, actually.
That's interesting. Do you agree, Stempie?
It's the poor that it's let down, not the middle classes.
A combination of both, I'll say what works in its advantage is that its opposition is just shocking. They've got
the gift of weak opposition.
They're really weak. I mean, if you're looking at what's happening in this province, the middle class may be unhappy but may feel that they have no option but to vote the ANC again.
Mia, if you look at the policy options of the opposition, the point that Stembiso is making, do they put a better plan on the table?
No, I think they often put no plan on the table. It's just criticism or comments. I think the DA does a good job of monitoring health, especially in Gauteng, for instance, with Life Esidimeni. The DA played a major role in exposing it, but I don't think they've got a plan on the table, no.
Well, I thought that as well, and I'm now very glad to hear I'm not alone. Thank you so very much to everyone on the panel. Up next, a sculptor on a mission in the cool stuff.